Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be fixing this antique sled that was being thrown out on the side of the road. I'm going to be taking this completely apart, painting each individual piece and cutting some new wood for it and making it look like new. So stick around and see what I've got. I'm going to first start out just by rinsing down the sled, and this will clean off the metal. I'm not as much worried about the wood because it's all rotted out and needs to be completely replaced anyways. I'll be using the wood as a template to cut the new pieces of wood, but other than that, they can just be thrown in the trash. I'm going to start out by taking this completely apart, seeing what I have to work with. I'll fix each individual piece and then put it back together. Most of the fasteners holding this together are metal rivets. The easiest way to get these apart is just drilling out the center, and then the two halves will come apart easily. Now I've gotten everything taken apart. I'm going to start by recreating all the wood pieces on the sled. Now there's two that were missing off of the sled to begin with when I found it, and I'm going to be recreating those as well, just from what else I have seen online. Now I'm not sure what type of wood they used originally for the sled. It's in too rough of shape right now to figure that out, so I'm not going to be able to match it exactly. And it seems a little softer and not a hard wood, but I'm gonna actually be using some white oak for all the pieces that I'm gonna be creating for this. White oak is a lot harder and it's really strong too, especially when you have small pieces that you're cutting out. It's a little bit more difficult to work with, but once you have it done and finished, it's a really nice wood that will last a long time. Now I've got the rails for the sides done, and now that I'm finished with those, I'm going to move on to the three supports going across the sled holding everything together. Now these are a little bit different for each one, so I'm going to be careful to make sure I match these up perfectly. Now to line up the holes that need to be drilled out, can easily set the old one on top and I'll mark that through the hole onto the other one. Now a couple need to be notched for the metal to fit inside on the rails on the bottom. So I'll also be marking those, cutting those before I throw away these old pieces. Now the three supports are finished and ready to move on to the next step. And I'm going to be next starting with the handle on the front of the sled. Now the wood that I have is a little bit thicker. I want to get this exactly the same thickness so that the metal and everything lines up perfectly. So I'm going to send this through my joiner just to shave off a little bit off of each side, and this will whittle it down to the right thickness. Now I'm going to be using the old piece of wood as a stencil. I'll trace the outline of it to transfer it over to the new piece of wood. That way I know where to cut it out and make it as close to that shape as possible. Now on the one side, it is pretty well rotted out and some wood missing, so I'll try to make up for that and fix the outline so that it matches on both sides. The handle's done. Now I'm going to move on to building the platform for the sled. And like I mentioned before, I only have one piece of wood for this. The center one, I also need to create the two that go on the outside. Now, after ripping the boards down to be the right thickness and cutting them out exactly the same for the middle one, the two on the outside, I made those to match images I found online for antique sleds that are original, so those should match pretty closely to what the original sled had on it. Now all the rough pieces of wood have been cut out. I'm gonna round over all the edges, make it a little bit smoother to hold on to with these round over router bits. So I'll put this on the router table and make it a little bit quicker to send all these pieces through. After smoothing out the corners with the router bit, I'm gonna sand every piece down to get it smooth and ready to finish. All the wood pieces are finished, ready to set aside. I'm gonna move on to the metal pieces now. And especially the rails need a lot of work. This one right here has been bent and crushed down at the bottom. Now all the bending has caused the metal to tear, so I'm gonna have to repair this with the welder, but before I do this, I have to bend it back in place. Now, in no means am I great at welding or a professional at welding, so if you are, don't hate on my welding job. It got the job done, but it's probably not the best that it could be. Now with the welder, I'm building up extra material. I'm welding the two pieces back together, but then adding a little bit extra material in there because I'm gonna come back with a grinder and smooth this out. And that way I'll make sure I filled in the gap completely and I can get everything back to the way it should be. Now the welding and grinding has gone really well. It looks good. I'm going to move on to the next step, which is prepping the surfaces for paint. And for most of this, it's going to be sanding down the paint just enough to scratch up the surface. That way the new paint will actually bond with this and won't peel off as easily. So I'm going to sand this all down, and any places that have rust or paint that's chipped off pretty badly, I'm going to sand down extra so that you won't see the texture difference between the smooth paint base and then the rougher and rusted pieces as well. Now for paint that I'm going to be using, the final coat will be a very simple Rust-Oleum paint that you can find just about anywhere. A metal spray paint will work best for this because it's going to be bonding to the paint as well as the metal. I'm going to first spray this with a primer, and this is going to be a red primer, so it's going to be easier to cover up with the final coat. But this will just seal all the exposed metal and any rust that's left over. It will seal it and allow the paint to bond better. Now after doing one coat of primer over all the pieces, I'm going to come back with the red Rust-Oleum paint now and do 2 coats of the finished paint. Now one more thing I'm going to be painting with the red Rust-Oleum paint is the arrow on the center board of the sled. If you look really closely, there's a faint red arrow that goes all the way up that center board, and there's a section in the middle where the arrow stops, and traditionally that's where the company logo would go, the manufacturer logo. So I don't know what brand this is, unfortunately, so I can't really recreate that. However, I do have something in mind that I'm going to put in the place of that to kind of make it unique and personalize it as well. Now I've gotten all the pieces finished and ready to start assembling, and to do this I went to the store and grabbed some nuts and bolts for new fasteners to hold everything together. Unfortunately, there were a few sizes that weren't able to be found at the store, so I'm actually going to cut these off to fit the right size. Now there's a trick in cutting these so that you don't mess up the threads, and that's to put the nut on first past where you're going to cut it, and then you can back the nut off after, and that will correct any of the threads you crush while you're cutting it. Now I just have 6 more screws on the bottom that I'm going to put in, and then I have finished assembling the sled. Next, I'm going to be also adding a finish over top of the wood on the bottom and top. This will seal the wood from any moisture and rain that gets on it. It's mostly going to be used as a decoration, not as much out in the weather, so I'm not too worried about having an exterior finish on this. The polyacrylic should do just fine. I also hand lettered a H in that section where the logo typically would go for the sled, and that's just for our family name and kind of makes it a little more personalized and unique to us. So that just about finishes up the video for today. I'll show you some before and after pictures on the transformation of the sled. Now this is a project that's been in my shop for quite some time. I've just been waiting for the season to come along so that I can fix it up and we'll use it. Now I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I love to see antiques being restored instead of thrown out, actually being made useful again and even beautiful. And I love this restoration of this old sled. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button down below if you enjoyed this video. Also leave any comments you have down in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys and I'll try to reply to any comments you guys leave. Also, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel and you enjoyed the content, think about hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell icon. That will send you notifications when I upload new videos so that you won't miss out on any of my content. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.